This is a true story. The reconstructions are based on original cockpit voice recordings.
Aeroperú crossing at 260 of Lima at 31 miles west. Level is 10,700. Velocity is...
In October 1996, a state-of-the-art passenger jet careers out of control for 30 horrific minutes, then crashes into the Pacific Ocean. At the time, no one understands how this could happen. The answer to the mystery may be found in the aircraft's black box flight recorder. The story investigators uncover is how a simple human error set off a chain of events that ended in tragedy.
$2 of American money brought down a $75 million aircraft and killed 70 people.
This kind of a problem that they faced that night was probably one of 10 over the last 20 or 30 years.
You never lose hope immediately. It takes time for you to get to that point that you will accept the fact that there's no people that got out of their life.
Lima, Peru. Jorge Chavez International Airport. Aeroperú Flight 603 prepares for takeoff for Santiago, Chile. The plane is a 4-year-old Boeing 757, a state-of-the-art passenger carrier known for its reliability and safety. Aeroperú's Flight 603 is flown by two of the national airline's best pilots, Captain Eric Schreiber, 58, and First Officer David Fernandez, 42. 61 passengers and 9 crew members are on board. Most are Chileans on their way home. Others are Peruvian, British, Italian, Spanish, one New Zealander, and other Latin Americans. Among them are the brother-in-law and a close friend of Mexican businessman Mona Albert.
Our companies do business in South America. We export, and every so often we will go to see our clients. And on this trip, Kenny and Abraham went to see some clients in Peru and Chile. I had a very good relationship with both of them. With my brother-in-law, of course, we were like brothers. I love the guy. He married my only sister, so we had a great relationship.
Checklists are complete. First Officer Fernandez calls the tower.
Lima Tower, Aeroperú 603, runway 15, ready for takeoff. Aeroperú 603, use noise abatement.
Wind calm, ready for takeoff on runway 15.
1515, transponder.
Flaps 15, takeoff briefing complete.
The captain makes a joke about the precision.
See how accurate we are? Not even Swiss. Rolling.
The Aeroperú 757 is among a new generation of computer-controlled aircraft in which pilots are trained to rely on a central data system that's designed to reduce errors, both mechanical and human.
Power set.
On takeoff, the aircraft performs perfectly.
80 knots.
Check.
V1, looked in. V2.
Gear up.
The moment they lift off, the pilots get a very unusual reading.
V2 plus 10.
The altimeters are stuck.
The altimeter indicates the height of the aircraft off the ground. It reads 0, though they are obviously flying.
The altimeters have stuck.
Yeah,
All of them.
this is really new. Keep V2 plus 10.
The 757 is equipped with 3 altimeters, one for the pilot, one for the co-pilot, and one Then they lose another crucial instrument, the airspeed indicator.
The speed. The speed.
What's going on around climbing?
I am climbing with the speed.
Hold it. Maintain speed.
Aeroperú 603 leaves the lights of Lima out over the Pacific Ocean. With no airspeed or altitude instruments, the pilots are now flying blind. The air traffic control tower in Lima maintains contact with the aircraft, noting its altitude and course. He does not hear when the pilots get a new minor warning that they must adjust the rudder, which steers the aircraft left and right.
603.
We are descending.
Rudder ratio.
That's strange. Turn to the right.
Al McLeod is a veteran Air Canada pilot.
They got a rudder ratio warning, which consists of an amber light that would come flashing on there with a little beeping horn and a message on this engine crew alerting system saying rudder ratio. That's just a system that reduces the amount of rudder the airplane has that can be used as the airplane accelerates and goes faster and faster. Because it was sensing wrong or improper information, it sensed a fault, so it gave a warning to the crew.
The erratic warnings are all being generated by the plane's central computer, but the pilots cannot understand why. Then, the dead altimeters spring to life.
Climb.
I am.
Climb. You're going down, David.
I am up with the speed.
Yeah, it's stuck. Come on, trim rudder ratio. Climb. Set heading 100. Now you're... It's okay on this heading.
Set the climb thrust. Center autopilot in command.
Suddenly, altitude readings return to normal, but each passing moment takes them further into the dark night. Captain Shriver tries to engage the autopilot to give them time to think.
There is no command. Speed is better now.
The autopilot requires identical data from two of the aircraft's 3 flight-controlled computers. But Shriver's instrument readings are so different from those of Fernandez, the autopilot disengages. Then, another alert.
Mach trim.
Mach trim indicates that the plane is not flying in a level position, and yet the 757 seems to be flying normally.
Let's go to basic instruments. Everything's going to hell.
Mach speed trim is a system that trims the airplane. It changes the angle of the horizontal stabilizer in the back end of the airplane, and that has to be changed as the airplane accelerates to a higher speed. It was getting false indications, so they got a warning that they had an overspeed, which of course they didn't. That warning would consist of, again, master caution and a master warning, which is a red light associated with an oral warning as well.
Despite confusing warnings and no autopilot, the aircraft is controllable. If necessary, Shriver could keep the plane aloft for hours. He decides to land. He instructs his first officer, Fernandez, to declare an emergency.
We are in an emergency. Aeroperú 603, Lima.
We are declaring an emergency.
We have no basic instruments, no altimeter, no airspeed indicator. Declaring emergency.
Proceed. Altitude.
We don't have. We're up to 1,000 feet, approximately 1,700.
603.
Confirm if possible if you can change your frequency to 119.7 to make sure you can receive radar instructions.
Just 60 kilometers from Lima, the pilots of Aeroperú Flight 603 are flying without instruments and hoping the tower can help bring them down alive.
Lima, 603.
Aeroperú
603, Lima.
We request vectors for ILS.
Runway 15.
They seek the runway with the help of a guidance transmitter called the Instrument Landing System, or ILS. The ILS provides information on the course, while altitude information comes from the aircraft's transponder.
Affirmative. Maintain present altitude.
What level do we have? We have 4,000 feet. Can you confirm for us?
Correct. Maintain 4,000.
Shriver and Fernandez have never experienced nor been trained for this emergency.
Auto throttle disconnect.
Really, we don't have any control.
Under control, not even the basics.
Let's see. Check everything.
the airplane was controllable. But you first have to diagnose what's wrong. And it's very easy from 20/20 hindsight, sitting here in a chair on a nice sunny day, to say, this is what he should have done. But in the cold, dark night, with bells and whistles going off, it's very difficult to analyze conflicting information that you're getting. This kind of a problem that they faced that night was probably one of 10 over the last 20 or 30 years that has been similar to this.
Over the dark Pacific Ocean, the pilots cannot determine altitude nor speed by sight. They request that the tower help guide them in.
Responding.
Airspeed is 0. All speeds. Right. Can you give us the airspeed, please, if you have us on the radar?
Yes, affirmative. As of 10 seconds.
It seems that you're climbing at level 6,000 at 22 miles south on heading 195.
The air traffic controller's computers calculate a correct airspeed by measuring the plane's movement over the ground.
Okay, we have that. We are on heading 190, and we have
7,000 feet on the altimeter.
Yes, correct. You're now reaching 7,000.
But neither the pilots nor the air traffic controller know the altitude indicated on the scope is incorrect. It's coming from the airplane's erratic computer.
The air traffic controller would try to help the pilot, but he was receiving the wrong information on altitude. He was receiving a wrong indication from the captain's altimeter.
The reason the air traffic control system was transmitting improper altitude readout information to the airplane was because the airplane's altimeter, through the air data computer, would send the indicated altitude that the airplane was experiencing down to the radar unit, and of course it was incorrect. And they would read it off their readout down in the air traffic control center and transmit it back to the pilots, and of course it was incorrect because they were getting incorrect information to begin with.
Investigators will later discover that Aeroperú 603 was drifting downward, while the altimeter showed them at a near constant 10,000 feet. With incorrect altitude information being transmitted from the aircraft to the tower, they don't know that the plane is descending.
Your distance is 30 miles. Do you want a heading to proceed to the localizer, correct?
Correct.
We're going to suggest course north 360.
360. We have problems here reading the instruments. You're going to have to help me with altitudes and airspeeds.
If it is possible.
Okay, received.
Let's go. The approach is set.
The 757's computer sent critical warnings, information that the pilots are trained to obey, but cannot trust.
Let's try to make a descent on this heading.
It's climbing.
The airspeed plummets to below stall speed, and then races up again.
Let's go down to 10,000 feet. Why does the speed go away so fast? Would it be the real speed?
That's what worries me. No, I don't think so. Can you verify our speed, please?
320 was indicated.
We have 350,
The
but
engines are on idle, but we keep accelerating and accelerating.
Okay, proceed.
The nerves are now stretched tight. Fernandez suggests they extend the speed brakes used to rapidly slow the aircraft.
Extend the speed brakes.
For a moment it appears to be working, then another warning.
All three indicators are fine on speed. Fine on speed. Overspeed.
Overspeed means the plane is flying too fast. The pilots cannot believe it, but the warning adds to their confusion. They're forced to choose, speed up or slow down. The lives of 70 people are in their hands. Minutes have passed since takeoff. Then the computerized brain of Aeroperú Flight 603 sends another burst of contradictory warnings.
Rudder ratio.
can't be. Nothing's disconnecting.
All engine instruments are okay.
What can our real speed be?
The speed indications are okay.
Lima Tower provides their only chance of survival.
We are observing you crossing the 260 of Lima at 31 miles west. Level is 10,700. Velocity is approximately 280.
0 over the ground.
Perfect.
The controller's 10,700 feet information is wrong. False information is being generated by the 757's computers and radioed to the tower.
Overspeed!
The brakes are still on, but now another overspeed warning. Now the stall warning sounds.
Let's descend.
Can't be over speed. We're still flying.
They get a stall warning that the airplane is falling out of the sky. At the same time, they got overspeed warning. Impossible to have two contradictory alarms. Either you're stalling or either you're having an overspeed. So that created more confusion. Really, this problem has never happened before. It was a new emergency.
In aviation, you always figure, what's going to kill me? What is the critical thing? Let's take care of that first. And then we'll take care of the other lesser issues later on. When you get a stall warning or when you get an overspeed indication, you need to pay attention to those immediately. In this case, they were getting both a stall warning and an overspeed. Well, which is right?
First Officer David Fernandez finally realizes that the odds are against a safe landing.
We request, is there any plane that can take off and rescue us?
Acknowledged. Rescue has been alerted.
Any plane in the area to guide us.
An Aeroperú that may be in the area. Anybody?
Oh, don't say anything like that.
Yes, because right now we are in a stall.
The stick shaker starts vibrating violently, indicating the 757 is going too slow and will fall from the sky.
Aeroperú 603. We have a 707 that is leaving for Putumayo. We will advise them.
We're not in a stall. It's a false alarm.
Shriver's airspeed indicator reads 350 knots, well above stall speed.
No, we have stick shaker. It has to be.
But even with speed brakes and everything, we're maintaining
9,500 feet. Why aren't we getting the same reading?
When the airplane is slowed up to a point in the air that it can no longer sustain itself in flight, it stalls, the wing stalls or stops flying. There's a warning system built into the airplane that tells the pilots when that's happening. It's known as a stick shaker, along with a voice warning, which we just heard. When the stick shaker goes off because the airplane is slowed down too much, you get a warning like this, where the control column is shaking and vibrating, along with the voice warning saying that the airplane is stalling, and of course the pilots would go into the aircraft stall recovery procedure at that point.
The pilots fail in their attempt at a landing. The best hope now is that another aircraft can get airborne in time to guide the 757 back to the airport.
To have another aircraft come alongside and formate, or you formate on it, would have been one way of recovering from this abnormal situation. However, we must remember that the flight was at night in darkness. The pilots may or may not have had any formation flying training, but that would have been one way to resolve the problem quite well.
What's happening?
too low terrain.
Now the pilots receive the most terrifying warning of all. It's called the ground proximity alarm, meaning a collision with the Earth is imminent. Still, the tower tells them they are at 10,000 feet.
We have the terrain alarm and we're supposed to be at 10,000 feet. According to the monitor, it was 105.
There is no checklist for if you have these 7 or 8 warnings going off, which they did, and they couldn't shut them off. It's a very rattling experience. I could play that tape for you. You hear those things, whoop, whoop, pull up, terrain, and all of these things going off, and the stick shaker, it's a very unnerving environment.
All the computers are going crazy here.
Shriver turns the airplane towards the sea, away from a possible collision with a mountain or skyscraper. Despite the erroneous warnings, the terrain alarm is correct.
There's a system on board the aircraft, the ground proximity warning system, and it senses the rate of descent in the airplane. The irony of the situation is they were getting warnings from that sea, too low, terrain, too low. That probably, in all probability, was a true warning. But because they'd been subjected to so many warnings and ongoing false warnings, horns, bells, and whistles, they didn't really, I don't think, react to that too seriously.
Are we going down now?
We have 370 knots. Are we descending now?
We're showing the same speed. You have 200 knots
Speed approximately.
Speed 200 knots.
220 ground speed, reducing speed slightly.
200 knots is precariously close to a stall speed.
Damn, we're gonna stall right now.
Let's go up. Let's see. Let's go up here.
Two Peruvian men grapple with a deadly situation. A computer that tells them they're going too fast, too slow, and too low all at once. Shriver decides to risk a second attempt at landing, seeking a signal known as an ILS to guide the aircraft to the runway.
I'm gonna try to intercept the ILS. I'm trying to descend.
Lima, Aeroperú 603. We will try to intercept the ILS. Let us know if we are in.
Received Aeroperú 603.
You show now level 9700.
The instruments seem to be working. For a moment, there's a glimmer of hope.
This one's right.
This one's okay too.
The air traffic controller aims to raise the pilot's spirits with good news.
Stand by to verify speed. The 707 is about to take off. It is on taxi.
Confirm our speed.
It is very important we do not have any speed indications on board.
How can we be flying at this speed if we're descending with engines on idle?
Give me the altitude, please.
Yes, you are maintaining 9700 according to the scope, sir.
9,700?
Yes, correct.
What is your indicated altitude? Do you have any visual reference?
9700!
But it is indicating too low terrain. Are you sure you have us on the radar at 50 miles?
Hey, look! The 370, we have
370 what? We lower gear.
Aeroperú 603, Lima.
What do we do with the gear?
Suddenly they realize the awful truth.
We're hitting water. Pull it up.
Climb Aeroperú 603 if you need to pull up.
For 20 seconds, the pilots struggle for altitude.
Aeroperú 603, Lima. Aeroperú 603, Lima.
The next morning, Mexican businessman Moniz Albert learns that an Aeroperú flight has crashed.
5 minutes after takeoff, the crew informed the tower that they were having an emergency and they requested periods to return to Lima. During the process, contact with the aircraft was lost at 0110, with the latest position on the aircraft being 50 miles north of the city of Lima.
About 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up and turned on the news channel, and I heard there was a crash, an airplane crash of Aeroperú, but the news mentioned New York to Lima.
Rescue operations are underway by authorities. The aircraft was carrying 61 passengers and 9 crew members.
His brother-in-law and his business partner were on flight Aeroperú 603.
So I went to the shower and didn't pay a lot of attention. But when I came out, they corrected the news and they said from Lima to Santiago. And I knew in that plane Kenny and Abraham were flying. The news was very late, so they mentioned there might be some survivors, and they mentioned that the plane crashed on the Pacific Ocean, and they didn't have a lot of news. And the crash was at night, so in my mind, I thought that the plane sort of landed on water, and most people got out.
Guido Fernandez has just been appointed Peru's accident investigator. Aeroperú is his first case. The co-pilot David Fernandez is his nephew.
I was in bed. It was about 4:30 in the morning, and they called me. Your nephew is lost in an airplane. They asked me, how do you feel that your nephew was a co-pilot? I said, I feel very bad, but I'm a professional and I have to do a job. I have to comply and complete my duty. So that's what I did.
Fernandez rushes to the crash site in a Navy helicopter. It's clear that there are no survivors. 9 bodies are floating in the debris, and the rest sank with the 757. Fernandez puts the awful sight and all thought of his nephew out of his mind. His job is to retrieve the aircraft's flight data and voice recorders to determine what happened. But he needs help. Fernandez contacts the National Transportation Safety Board in Washington, D.C., one of the world's leading agencies for air accident investigation.
They had found the aircraft. It was pretty well documented by radar. The Navy, the Peruvian Navy, had gotten a fix on the floats and the wreckage in the ocean. And the only thing left to do was find it on the bottom of the ocean, which they did not have the facilities for.
Rodriguez flies to Lima and joins Guido Fernandez in his effort to find answers.
When I found out that his nephew was the first officer, I suggested that perhaps they should consider removing Captain Fernandez from the investigation because of emotional involvement and what have you.
The American investigator's concerns soon vanish.
He was very objective, I would say an excellent investigator, considering that it was, and not a distant nephew, I mean, it was his very close relative. He did an outstanding job.
The black box in the Boeing 757 can emit a locator beacon for 30 days. The US Navy provides underwater remote-operated vehicles to survey the debris field, seeking the black boxes. It's clear to veteran investigator Rodriguez that the plane went down in one piece.
I've done in-flight breakups that were spread over 15, 16 miles and maybe a mile and a half wide, which tells you instantly that just what you know of looking at the wreckage, that this thing didn't hit in one piece. It clearly was disintegrating as it was crashing. But in this case, it was a fairly tight debris field, and so obviously it hit at high speed and was fairly closely knit wreckage pattern.
The data recorders are retrieved from the 757. Brought to the surface, the boxes are placed in coolers full of fresh water to keep them from oxidizing. They're swept back to Washington for analysis at the NTSB. The cockpit voice recorder might offer the evidence investigators seek. Every word spoken by pilots Shriver and Fernandez, and every unnerving alarm, has been recorded on audio tape. The recorded voices are faint and sometimes hard to make out, but the chaos in the cockpit rings through with chilling clarity. The tape is digitized into a computer and enhanced.
It was clear to us that they were really experiencing a problem with airspeed and altitude. And the airspeed and altitude indications in the aircraft are strictly a function of what we call the pitot-static system.
The pitot-static system is found on all aircraft, large or small. External ports measure outside air pressure to provide data on altitude and speed. If these ports are obstructed, the plane's computers generate false warnings. But why these ports would be blocked is a mystery. Robotic vehicles are deployed to find the missing piece of the puzzle. Investigators are stunned to discover that Captain Shriver's static port is completely blocked with tape. Just before Aeroperú 603 lifted off from Lima, maintenance workers cleaned the aircraft. A worker covered the static ports with tape to protect them. This is standard procedure, but he forgot to remove the tape. It was a small oversight with catastrophic results.
The taping was never removed, and when the airplane departed and started to fly, nothing but trapped static sea level air pressure was sensed by those instruments. And as a matter of fact, the airplane was climbing up in thinner air, and the information presented on the instruments and to the air data computer was false, which generated just totally non-normal readings.
The inspector who was supposed to quality check his work did not do it. And the supervisor out on the line that night was not there, he was sick, and there was a regular mechanic who was filling that role. He did not see it. And the captain or the pilot, in this case the captain did the pre-flight. They do a walk around looking for just that kind of thing. The captain did the pre-flight that night and he did not detect it either.
A little piece of paper with glue caused an accident. But the paper and the glue are not to blame. Humans are to blame. Because humans use that tape in the wrong place for the wrong purpose.
An accident shockingly similar to Aeroperú Flight 603 happened with another 757 just 8 months earlier. In February 1996, 189 people die when a German charter called Bergen Air crashes after takeoff near Puerto Plata in the Dominican Republic. The NTSB assists in the investigation. A survey of the wreckage revealed that one pitot tube, the other critical part of the pitot static system, is blocked. As with Aeroperú 603, night is the pilot's worst enemy. The Bergen Air pilot flips the plane upside down before crashing into the sea. Bulletins are immediately issued to all airline carriers about pitot static problems, but Aeroperú had not yet implemented the changes.
The bulletins and let's call it the fruits of the Dominican Republic investigation of Bergen Air had not yet reached Aeroperú at the time this accident occurred. The Peruvian government very correctly made a point of that in their report on the accident, saying that they should have given more impetus to those recommendations to get them out to the industry quicker.
9,700, but it is indicating too low terrain.
Even if Shriver and Fernandez had known about Bergen Air, it may not have helped them survive given the high pressure of their situation.
What? We lowered gear.
It's easy to sit here in the 757 cockpit and play the Monday morning quarterback. Having heard the bells and the overspeed warnings, the ground proximity warning, the stall warning, it was very easy to do that and sit here and say what I would have done, being an experienced pilot. But to put yourself into the position of those two pilots that night, they were in an extremely difficult situation to fly that airplane and recover from that experience.
2 weeks after the crash, Moniz Albert joins dozens of grieving families seeking the remains of his brother-in-law and his friend. He finally identifies them in a Lima morgue.
I wanted to find him. I really wanted to find him. And one part of me didn't want to find him because there was this fantasy that if I don't find him, maybe they're in an island with a drink and looking at some girls dancing. I can close the chapter. I can go and take him and have him buried, and there'll be a place for the family to go and put some flowers once in a while and say, okay, my brother-in-law's here, or my dad is here, or my husband is here.
Now that investigators have their answer to the mysterious loss of Aeroperú 603, the lawsuits begin. In November 1996, a Miami lawyer takes the case on behalf of 41 passengers and crew, arguing that Boeing is liable for the accident.
Boeing has to foresee the misuse of their product. In other words, the manufacturer of a product is legally liable for the foreseeable misuse of their product, if it can be corrected. In other words, Boeing builds the airplane with a potential hazard in it. That hazard is that in order to clean the airplane, you have to cover the static port. And if you don't take it off, the airplane can crash.
I wanted them back. And since I couldn't get him back, at least I wanted the wives of the victims to get compensated. How much is that worth? I don't know. I didn't know. Abraham had 3 daughters, and now they don't have a father. So, what is the compensation? The best compensation, if it can be done, is get them back. Give them life back again. But because that is not possible, then the other possibility is to get a monetary compensation. And then you fight for the best compensation you can get.
Boeing argues that Aeroperú is at fault, not its 757. An Aeroperú worker taped the static port, which is marked with clear warnings. Boeing also blames Captain Eric Schreiber. It was his job to visually inspect the aircraft before taking off. But investigator Richard Rodriguez can understand how Schreiber overlooked the tape on the static port.
One of the reasons is it's very high. It's about maybe 15, 17 feet up in the air, and at night with a flashlight, and this happened to be duct tape, which you're not supposed to use. They specified the tape, and it was duct tape, which is silver, so it would not distinguish itself against the background of the fuselage of the aircraft. So basically 3 or 4 people failed to detect the tape on the aircraft prior to departure.
As the search for blame continues, the worker who taped the ports is jailed for negligent homicide.
Lawyers, sometimes they confuse matters, and they send the guy and ask people questions, and that questions, the one that stuck the tape was the paper, was the lowest cultured, and the one that knew less about what could happen. And the judge resolved that he was the one responsible, and he was in jail.
Schreiber and Fernandez were also scrutinized. Veteran pilot Alan McLeod believes that in their situation, he would not have attempted to land. He would have continued to fly for as long as he could with the plane angled upwards slightly and the speed set just above cruise.
Experience has shown that if you don't fly the airplane when you're experiencing an abnormal situation, they certainly were, you must fly the airplane. You must concentrate on flying the airplane and get the airplane under control, first and foremost.
Are we going down now?
We have 370 knots.
If you don't do that, the airplane's going to bite you, and you're going to end up in more serious situations. So I would fly the airplane, make sure I was able to fly it safely, if only by using the attitude direction indicator and normal power settings that I was familiar with, and then eventually work my way back and get it on the ground.
In 1999, Boeing and Aeroperú decide to settle the lawsuits out of court. Families and loved ones received an exceptional settlement, averaging $1 million US per victim. The damages were high because of the terrible way the victims of Aeroperú died.
We were able to show that a lot of the people were alive. In a crash like this, a lot of the people would survive the crash and then die of drowning. There was no question in our minds that the people suffered terrible, terrible terror and pain when this happened to them. They were horrified. They were awake. They knew what happened.
The disaster helped sink Aeroperú. Combined with increased competition and rising debt, the national airline goes bankrupt in 1999. Boeing increases training on pitot-static problems and issues new regulations and approved static port covers. Since 1996, there has not been another pitot-static failure like the one on Aeroperú 603.
The designers of these products and the manufacturers of the products know that they have to take safety into account. They have to, of course they do that because they know it's the right thing to do. But they also know that if they don't do it, there's going to be somebody watching them that's going to investigate it, that's going to find out what happened, and that they're going to be accountable for what they do wrong. And that if they don't take into consideration safety, they're going to have to pay for it.
The case is settled, and the airline industry moves on. Such is the world of commercial aviation. But it's little consolation for those whose lives were scarred forever by an insignificant piece of tape.
Exactly, you say that guy doesn't exist anymore? It's very hard to swallow. It's very hard to understand, and it took me a long time to accept So the memory is still there, and it will be there for a long time. I'm not going to let go. I don't want to let go.
National Geographic Channel's 50th anniversary Kennedy season continues with Killing Kennedy, starring Rob Lowe and produced by Ridley Scott, tonight at 9.